Hello everybody and welcome to CFO Conversations. I'm your host Paula Kensington and I have the great pleasure to welcome back Rachel White today.
Thank you, Paula.
And today we're going to talk about communication, and we know that this is something that's very old and has served us very well, but in today's world and tomorrow's world of digital and the technology that's available to us, how is that impacting our ability and our methods of communicating? And more importantly, how is that impacting people in our teams where we're asking them to step up and be those emerging leaders? Are we giving them the success or the places to actually succeed if we're always chatting so fast on things like Slack and Yammer? And it's almost like they're in hiding. I always feel that, and we've spoken about this, if a conversation perhaps needs to be had face to face, and are we hiding behind technology? Rachel, what do you think?
Paula, that's a very big topic and a really interesting angle to take on it. As you've spoken about with Sue Rosen, a very large chunk of our communication is actually non-verbal. I don't know the exact statistic, but I think it's around somewhere between 90 and 93% of communication is actually not the words you use. And obviously a lot of that in whatever platform you're using, whether that be text messages, emails, chat, at the end of the day it's text on a screen. And the technology hasn't got really beyond that in terms of picking up those nuances yet, and probably won't for quite some time. It's funny, we're actually on very much a beginning of a curve on that stuff. And so because of that, those challenges in terms of communication are still very much there regardless of what the technology is. There is a theme that you mentioned I'd like to draw out on, which is that of hiding. For the finance teams I've run for years, one of the things I've noticed, and this is regardless of what the technology is, the new tech that comes out that allows you to communicate with folks in a text-based format gets very popular very quickly because it is more of a natural inclination to use that than to stand up and go to the other person and just talk to them, whatever that happens to be. It even has a high-tech name in the tech world. It's called P2P, peer-to-peer, person-to-person conversations, for something that's obviously as old as time. As long as we've been conversing with each other, the most effective thing is for you and me sitting next to each other, for example, having a conversation. And so one of the things I know I do in my finance teams that I build is a few things. First, because you're not taught this stuff at university, and that is just the reality, my most effective teaching mechanism is by example. So I do the best that I can. I actually rather not have an office. I'm very happy with the open plan thing. I'll go hang with people out in the open. I'll go sit in the cafe. And actually I have the most amazing conversations with people that way who are coming to get a coffee. The second thing is if I need to go talk to a fellow exec team member, I get up and go talk to them. I don't generally... I find emails really good for really tactical stuff, which is booking a meeting to have a chat. Look, I've got real issues with this and I find email a great way to lay out my thoughts. Let's talk about this, but this is just to give you my thought pattern here. So those sorts of things. So it's having the tools serve you versus the other way around. But yeah, nothing beats actually going and having a conversation with people. Yeah,
that's right. And I think as a finance team, we're asking our emerging leaders and our two ICs to get good at storytelling. And how are we going to do that if people aren't having that bigger conversation, a bigger communication pattern to be able to learn how to deliver that? And I know when we were studying in our professional exams, storytelling wasn't even a concept. But in today's world, our emerging leaders need to be working on that. And I think, as we've said before, finance people can be quite introverted people, so it's not helping.
Yeah, and so for the controllers that I coach, the biggest thing I tell them, if you want to move from controller to CFO, is you need to learn how to communicate. That's it. There's no technical black magic here. It is all down to communication and EQ, which is being able to read the person on the other side of the table, the conflicting agendas which are often going on, and navigating your way through that. And that's actually not for everyone. That's okay. Sometimes it's worth acknowledging that. That doesn't in any way diminish the value of what a controller brings to the business in terms of their absolute focus on compliance and governance and getting the numbers right. That is, to be an effective CFO, an essential part of my team. The other thing I think is acknowledging that a lot of people go into the finance profession because they are often Introverted and extroverted are complex terms, but they're people who get great satisfaction out of doing a piece of work, meeting a deadline, achieving a deliverable. And I think it's really important not to lose what we do well as well. So I know my team, and especially the bigger it gets, the more these dynamics start to come into play. There will always be, at least for the foreseeable future, a core of my team whose job is either data processing or reconciliations. And the whole thing doesn't work without that. And so in many respects, whilst I can lead by example, for those who want to progress up the traditional career ladder, it is absolutely an essential skill. There are many people I actually hire for this who are just rock solid, stable people who come in and do that.
Yeah.
I encourage them to go and talk to people and communicate. I try and create a culture where that is a valued skill set. But there's also just acknowledging and meeting people where they're at. And so there will often be a chunk of my team for whom that's not their thing.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And that's right. And I think that's the value of diverse teams.
Yeah.
We know that.
Absolutely.
So I think the message to the audience today is that we love numbers and we've been great at doing that, and that's why we're probably accountants and finance professionals, but get good at the rhetoric and get good at the storytelling and think about the art of communication. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Paula.